Welcome back to Actually Useful, the show where we diagnose what's wrong with the internet and we chat with the good folks who are trying to fix it. What's up, Josh and Kate?
How we doing?
Hi.
Hello, hello. Josh, I hear you got some news for us.
News / a mini rant. So there was an article that came out in Fortune this week, and it's called Teen Boys Are Choosing AI Girlfriends Over Real Ones for Maximum Control, Zero Rejection. Experts say it could make them... You know what, Kate? I want you to guess the word the experts are saying it could make them.
Oh gosh. I just don't know how it could be worse.
And as soon as I say it, you're going to be like, that's worse.
That's so upsetting.
Experts say that teen boys choosing AI girlfriends is going to make them blank.
I mean, I would say I think at the end of the day, it's just making them fear rejection. I don't know, something like that. Unempathetic. Unempathetic is probably the most terrifying word I could think of.
Way too gay and woke. It's going to make them unemployable. So,
oh my God.
so this article, it's truly magic. It's everything you could want. A darkly misogynistic future, ignoring all of that to talk about capitalism and completely sidelining women in all of this. But the article is basically talking about how young boys are leaning on AI to fill in this loneliness that they're experiencing. And I'm all for, honestly, as we've discussed on this show, tackling the male loneliness problem. I think that's a legitimate thing to think about from a public health standpoint. But to completely lean into this oh no, we're going to lose our workforce if these boys become sociopathic, AI women addicted, incels is just crazy to me. It's really giving this other article that came out recently from NPR that was titled, Women Are Getting Most of the New Jobs. What's going on with men? And again, it's can we just for 2 seconds have one article that's just hey, women are doing pretty good right now. Hey, women are starting to close this gap that's been a chasm for most of human history. The thing that really got my goat in the NPR one is saying that because most of these jobs are in healthcare, and women make up 80% of the workforce there, we need to make healthcare jobs seem more masculine. It's a branding problem. So to get more male nurses, we need to tell them, hey, nurses need to be able to lift patients into their beds. You need to be strong as a nurse. And it's anyone needs to be strong as a nurse. It's a physical job. But I think something they talked about is there's been this revolution for young girls where it's we've tried to teach girls hey, if you want to be a stay-at-home mom, that's awesome. Or if you want to be a scientist, if you want to be an astronaut, if you want to study STEM, kind of this broadening of what it means to be a woman. And then the solution for men, instead of learning from that and being hey, let's expand our definition of what it means to be a man. You want to be a doctor? Awesome. What if you want to be a stay-at-home dad? What if you want to study interior design? Instead of doing that, we're saying, let's take all these jobs and make them fit this really rigid definition of masculinity. Let's take these things and rebrand them as strong, macho jobs. And it's how about we just say, these are the jobs that are available, and we want young boys to be empowered as young girls to pursue them. I don't get the strategy here.
Yeah, I mean, when you first sent it to me, it my first impulse was even when women are winning, it's not positioned as winning. And it reminded me of the Reese Witherspoon AI discourse that's going on.
Yeah.
Which is that Reese Witherspoon posted a video of her making a smoothie in her kitchen, and she was hey girls, we're getting left behind by the AI revolution. So her thing that she said was that jobs held by women are 3 times more likely to be automated by AI, which also doesn't really fit with this article that like women are going up in healthcare and now we're like getting more jobs. So they need to get their shit together with the data of like, are women employable or not, right? So they're like, oh, okay, jobs held by women are 3 times more likely to be automated by AI, but women use the technology at a rate 25% lower than men on average. She did not cite her sources. One of her sources was her own book club, which I don't think is statistically significant.
Not a source.
Not a source. I did find the white paper that she probably got that stat from, or like some article that wrote it. And it's from a Harvard Business School professor, Rembrandt Koenig. It's from February 2025. And it does say that women use AI at a rate that's 25% lower than men on average. And it's a very interesting study because this guy is like an AI booster. He's a professor at Harvard. But they did a study in Kenya of entrepreneurs who had not been exposed to ChatGPT. And they surveyed 17,000 Kenyan entrepreneurs, men and women. And for most of them, that was like kind of their first access to being able to like use ChatGPT and like learn how to be effective with it. And that was where they got a lot of this data of like, oh, women are reluctant. And specifically, it's because women were more worried about the costs of relying on computer generated information as it is perceived as unethical and cheating. So it's just like, even like that stat of like women are getting left behind. It's like, well, no, women are preserving their critical thinking. Women are feeling a little conflicted about using something that destroys communities. And also there was a piece in this paper that this like pro AI guy wrote of women are already held to a standard where we have to work harder to be seen as having expertise. So like using ChatGPT or any AI assisted like writing tool or whatever, it chips away at an already fragile podium from which women speak that is already taken with a grain of salt because we're women. So it was really uncool. Reese got a lot of hate for it. Now she's coming back and being like, oh, I wasn't paid for it. And it's like, okay, well, you weren't, but here's the receipt on it. Her company, Hello Sunshine, is selling an $850 data and AI storytelling class from Purdue University. So also interesting that she told us that the like hook for her was because she didn't know about AI. And it's like, well, actually, you're selling a product about how to use AI, but sure, whatever. So not a good look for Reese, particularly given who her like the audience that she's cultivated is. But it is something where overwhelmingly people received that as like, yeah, the people I know who like the women I know are like, I don't know, man, I feel weird about AI. Like I feel weird about it. It touches a lot of things I'm not really interested in harming. And so like that should be positioned to me as a win, but instead it's being positioned as like, oh, women are backwards, women are not adopting technology, women are not forward thinking, whatever. So women just can't win, you know?
I do think the one thing that's weird to me that we've talked about, Ariel, is like a lot of the time when there's these new technologies that are like super hyped up, the people who make them are not the early adopters. Like a lot of social media execs don't let their own children have social media accounts, or like they don't use it themselves. But this is one of those weird situations where it's like, I feel like a lot of these AI bros are like drinking their own Kool-Aid.
100%.
And it's like, shouldn't you of all people like know the limitations? Like I get public statements being like, this is going to change the world. But then like you personally using this to plan your workout routines and your diet and everything, like that just seems a little AI psychosis-y to me.
I mean, that's like the Anthropic CEO continuing to be held up as like, this guy is smart and using critical thinking. He literally thinks Claude is sentient. Like he literally thinks Claude is sentient. Like, I don't know what we're doing here, guys.
Return to monkey. Ariel, who are we chatting with today?
Today we're chatting with Kate Crow, a gothic romance author. Also, we should just tell the people, Kate and I are quite close friends. So I am thanked in the back of this book. If it sounds like we've known each other a while, that's because we have. But today's going to be fun. We are talking about the self-publishing industrial complex, for better or worse. There are many things that self-publishing has done for the book community, and there's many ways in which it's punishing authors and readers. But I think this is really interesting, and you and I have talked about doing this type of episode for a while. There's been such an explosion in the last like 10 years, really even the last 5 years, of democratized creator tools. So many of the companies that we featured on our show and had interviews with their founders were about a new way to disrupt a creative industry by empowering the people making that content even more. But it does create this big choke point on the discovery platforms. It creates a choke point of tools. It essentially is another monetization path that is not just the buy buying and selling of content. It's the buying and selling of content creating tools. So Kate's book, Till Death Do We Start, came out in January. It is self-published. You knew you were going to self-publish it from the beginning. And the reason, I will tell our listeners the hook of the book, it's going to sound like I'm describing a spoiler, and I'm really not, because again, remember, the book is titled Till Death Do We Start. So the premise of this book, it takes place in 1869 England. Our heroine, Jane, she is a spinster woman. She lives in her twin brother's house, and he fucking sucks. He like drinks, and he's shitty to his wife, and he's shitty to his sister. And so Jane has like no agency, because that's what happened to women in 1869 in England. She's got nobody to advocate for her. She's very interested in science, and she's teaching herself all about the anatomy. She really values her books. She and her brother and her sister-in-law go to a party at the beginning of the book held by a neighbor, a relatively wealthy neighbor, the Gardners. So Dr. Tristan Gardner at this party is planning to unveil a scientific discovery that he's made. Jane is at the party. She's milling around. She ends up going into a library, and she meets a mysterious figure, a hooded figure in the library, and they have like a bit of sexy banter, and she's like, oh, interesting, a new friend. And then she goes home and things kick off with her brother. He tries to marry Jane off to like an old guy, because that's what these brothers did in 1869 England. And she finally realizes that she has literally no power in this life. And so she decides she's going to take agency over the only thing she can, which is that she kills herself. So she throws herself into a river intending to die. And unbeknownst to her, Will Gardner, brother of Dr. Tristan, who happened to be the mysterious cloaked figure she was bantering with in the library, finds her dead body and thinks, oh my God, no, my new friend, I have to save her. Because what Jane did not know, because they never got to the scientific discovery, is that Will Gardner is a revivified corpse. And Dr. Tristan Gardner can revivify corpses. And so Will takes Jane's body to his brother and says, you need to revivify her. And of course, when she wakes up after intending to die, she's like, you men won't let me have fucking anything. You won't even let me die. And so the book is Will making it up to Jane that he took away the only thing she had agency over. And so it's a book about him figuring out how to give her more agency and how to make her life be worth living after she's dead.
That was great. Yeah. Yeah. I would have said like probably two sentences and then that was it. I'm like, I don't know, man.
I feel like we had to describe it for our listeners, because the thing about this that you knew from the beginning with this idea is like you really could not have traditionally published this book, because the idea of an on-page suicide, an on-page successful suicide in a romance novel is just simply not done in traditional publishing. And I'll give our listeners an example. We have another friend who did get a 2-book deal from a traditional publisher, and she is currently writing book 2 and was told by the publisher that like they cannot publish a heroine for a romance novel who's over the age of 30, because it is simply too radical to think that a woman over the age of 30 could be seen as hot and falling in love. So like, yeah, you can't have a suicided character in traditional publishing.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that it's like, is it worse that Jane kills herself or that she's 29? She's really close to that.
Yeah, both very controversial ideas in traditional publishing. So, Kate, you knew from the beginning you were going to self-publish. Tell us a little bit about what embarking on that felt like, because I think you knew it was going to be a lot of effort. It's a lot of work. And then talk us through the checklist of like everything that means to self-publish and promote a well-crafted, well-made novel that you're proud of. Like, what's the checklist of everything you had to do, everything you had to pay for? How did you get to the point where you could launch this book and then market it and actually get it sold?
And spoiler alert, it's exhausting.
It really, going into it, I knew it was going to be a lot of work. It was going to be bad. And, just like other people being like, it's going to be worse than you even thought. And then like, it is even worse than like what I thought on top of that. And especially because like the idea that a lot of people have behind self-publishing is that you're like, oh, you write a book and then you just like click the button on Amazon and then it's up and like, that's that, when it's like, truly there's a million more steps. And so once you write the book, then the editing process, which is honestly like, I think if you're depend if you're trad, if self-publishing, anything like that. Like that is like where you spend sort of like the bulk of your time going over that. The big benefit of being traditionally published versus self-publishing is that in traditional, the publisher pays for everything. The editing process in and of itself is incredibly expensive. There are people who pay upwards of $10,000 on editing, and that's like normal. There's like 3 or 4 steps in the editing process. There's the developmental edit, which is not even like necessarily what people like think of when you think of editing, because like when you say like, oh, I have my book edited, you think like spelling, grammar, like all that sort of stuff. But the developmental edit is the first stage in the process, and that goes over like all of like your plot and your story. And so you have someone who just like really pores over the manuscript on like a deep level and being like, okay, this is what works, this is what doesn't work. That in and of itself is probably the most expensive part of the editing process. And it's my book is about 120,000 words, and a lot of like the lower price points for editors, I was looking at like $3,400, which is yeah, a significant amount of money, especially when you're, when you're going out there and like you don't have anything else. Like I'm sort of like building everything off of this like one book by name. And so like when you're going through the process, like you don't know if you're ever going to make anything back. Like there's no guarantee at all. And so like that's like the first one where I know a lot of authors also like you're like, "Oh my gosh, like that's so expensive." And like it's definitely like a worth it process. Like I think like a big disclaimer, I think everyone deserves to get paid what they're worth. And like, just because you can't afford something doesn't mean that like rates are, not what they should be or anything like that. But that's just sort of like the first step in a very expensive process. For the most part, when you get your developmental edit back, like that's it. Like there's sometimes it might be a bit of like a conversation like with your editor of being like, okay, well, like did I fix these problems? Did I not fix the problem? Like sometimes if you want them to read it again, that isn't like baked into the original price. And then you have line edits and copy edits, which are frequently done together, but not necessarily, which are it's additional costs. And those are usually a little bit less, but like once again, looking at like my manuscript, it would have been like 25 to $3,000.
Whoa.
Line edits is going towards like language, like style. Like for my book, for example, it's since it's set in 1869 and it's in England, like there are different like it's like vocabulary things. And so it's like, okay, you have to be like, this is the terminology that that would be used, and like really like figuring it out and being like, okay, like I think like my biggest time suck, which Ariel can definitely attest to, is like Googling like the origin of words. Cause like even things where you're like, oh, this is sort of like old timey. It's like, nope, the first time it was used in like the 1960s. And especially with romance novels, like there's like some of these issues. I don't know if I can say this on your podcast, but this actually is a fun fact.
You can say this on our podcast.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. Okay. So like clitoris is a word that's existed for like hundreds of years, like has been, used in a lot of things like published. But clit, which is the word that in romance novels you read a lot, that came around, I want to say like the 1940s, 50s. And so like just like looking into stuff like that, like that's what like line editing things where you're like, okay, like is this a thing like besides like you don't want to have like the problem of like someone in like historical novels saying what's up, like that's its own horrific problem, but then there are like the other smaller ones that you're like, is this a thing, is this not a thing? So sometimes if you're lucky you can bundle line edits and copy edits, and then copy edits is what a lot of people like when you think of like, oh, is this book edited or not, it's like spelling, grammar, punctuation, all of that great stuff. Sometimes like that's in like this same sort of realm. And then your final part of the process after you've gone through and done everything else would be proofreading. Less expensive. For the most part, a lot of people, it's around like a penny a word. So it depends on how long your book is. And especially in the self-publishing world, these books are typically longer. Because of that, it's like a pretty penny. So like already with like what I've described in just the editing process alone, like you're at almost like $10,000 if you want to go through all of the steps, like make sure it's like constructed and something that, you're proud of, and also that like you can't expect people to like spend their money on, because like as like Ariel said, it's like it should be like a good, like well written, well constructed book, and it's like you want to put like the best professional piece out there.
Yeah, and then on top of that, I mean, you could do a sensitivity reader. If like in the book that I'm writing, I have characters at some point that are POV characters that are not my race. So like I would want somebody to take a sensitivity pass at that. You paid for cover art. You have a professionally designed cover art. You have to get it formatted, things you can do yourself or pay someone to get it formatted. If you've ever seen it get printed with like really weird kerning or something, that's because Amazon has products that can format it for you. But do you want to use that? Do you want to pay for that? Is that part of your service? And then you have to promote this.
Hmm.
One of the things with traditional publishing is, yeah, you don't have to pay for anything. You probably get an advance, right? Of like, you get some money up front when they decide to buy your book. Self-publishing, you front it all. But the other thing about traditional publishing that has been eroded in the last number of years, and we know this just knowing, writer friends, is that a lot of times traditional publishing, there's no guarantee you're going to get marketed, right? So like you probably still have to do, these days when you try to get an agent, when you try to get published, they'll ask you if you already have a big social media following. And like everybody in this conversation right now, all three of us can attest, social media marketing is a fuck ton of work. It's unforgiving. It's a ton of work. Like that, the people behind that little scroll machine are doing a shit ton of hours of editing. Kate, you edit all your own stuff, you record all your own stuff, and like this is your primary path to marketing,
Yeah, and that's the thing where it's like it really is, self-publishing is like several full-time jobs. Because
Yeah.
that is the big thing with marketing, and like part of also why I decided to be self-publishing is that like everyone, like you all have to be on social media now. If you want to write a book, you have to be on social media. There are very few authors who've like been grandfathered in. Like there are a lot more authors that like pop up every day that I'm just like, "Oh no, this person has to do TikTok." Like, and that's so upsetting, just on a personal level. And so that was part of it where it's like, okay, I don't want anyone, if I'm going to like be putting in all of this work, I don't want someone to be like, can we actually do this instead? Or like, we don't like this hook, we want you to do this one. And it's like, no, like the buck is gonna stop here. And so yeah, I do all of my own, content pulls. I figure out like all like the hooks by myself, editing, videoing B-roll, because that's the other part is of something that is becoming a more valuable service now, are content polls. And so you can get people, for the most part, I've seen a lot of people who either act as like writer PAs, or they're like popular bookstagrammers, or, book talk people getting in, and they're like, okay, I'll read your book and go through and like pull the, like, these are the lines, these are the scenes that you should have, that you should like make content out of, because that's going to attract the most people to your books, which is very valuable. If I could afford it, like that is one of many of the dreams of it. But yeah, very few authors do this like full time. Like even traditionally published authors have a day job. Like that is the biggest thing that I think people like don't think about, is that like most of the people that you read have something else going on, or independently wealthy. Like that is really what's behind it all, is like there has to be other money, because this is not like a huge like cash grab operation, which people assume that it is. It's a lot of it is just like a very small amount.
Yeah. When I think about like the choke points in these discovery mediums and how you think about like Amazon's role in self-publishing, which like self-publishing did exist before Amazon, but like nothing has impacted the self-publishing and the book industry at large. Like Amazon, we talk about it's affected a lot of industries. It has really, really affected the book industry. Like don't forget, it first sold books. It was a bookstore first. But I think when people think about this, like we'll talk about Kindle, but like the Kindle ecosystem for Amazon, I think readers who have not gone through the publishing process or have not like thought about what it takes to be an author on in the Kindle Unlimited ecosystem, I think you think about the supply and demand of that marketplace as you as a reader are providing demand. The demand is for books. And so Amazon's stake in having a machine, you know, a pipeline that can make more books and make it easier to have more books, that would seem like it's normal marketplace economics. Like in marketplace economics, the rule is always supply, supply, supply. Like if you have enough supply, if it's merchandised the right way, you can find demand for really anything. And so people think about it that way. But that's not actually what the ecosystem is. That's not the marketplace. The marketplace is that the customers are people who want to publish their book for whatever reason. It could be like Kate, who had a book that like needed a path to publication that was not going to find it easy in traditional publication. It could be people who, again, are writing in some kind of niche. It could be people who figured out that there is a way to make a lot more money and have a lot more agency in doing self-publishing if you're doing it full time. And then there's also people who just think it's easy. They think they can do AI generated slop. They think they can write out, you know, a completely unstructured manifesto and just go publish it. But because there are so many of those people, the marketplace economics here is that the demand is people who want to see their byline exist in Amazon's storefront. And the supply is all of the different tools Amazon sells you so that you can pay to have a byline in their storefront. Because if you think about it, then there's this whole other piece of Amazon marketing those books, and that has nothing to do with the ecosystem they have of selling creator tools, right? So, Kate, take us through how Amazon pays authors. So you said it's very expensive. You don't know if you're going to get the money back. You still have to have a full-time job no matter what you're making money off of. How does Amazon pay authors?
Yeah. So there are a couple options. The one that is most popular and what a lot of people go to, especially in the beginning, is the Kindle Unlimited program. And so what you do as a reader for Kindle Unlimited is it's basically Spotify for books. What you do is you can check out as many books as you want. Over the course of a month for like one flat fee. I think it's like $13.99. It's something like that. And it's any of the books that are in the Kindle Unlimited system. And there are a lot of self-published books, there are traditionally published books, you know, you can get everything, but it is very dependent on what you read. If you are a romance reader, Kindle Unlimited has an incredible value for you
Yep.
because like it's that one small fee, and then you have thousands and thousands of books.
And as we've said before on this show, romance readers read 10 times the amount of books that non-romance readers read. So that is a super reader genre. And so like the likelihood of going through many, 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 many books is quite high in the romance world.
Yeah. Like, and it's to the point where you can think that you have like the most niche taste, and you're like, this is very specific to what I want, and you're not going to run out of books. Like I am 5 years in on some things that you like, if I'm talking to someone off the street and I'm like, this is what I read primarily, and you're like, what? That's like what, like a dozen books, like, you know, like 20 at most. And it's like, no, it's hundreds. It's hundreds,
Okay.
and like there are more published every day.
My current favorite genre of book is what I call a cozy cat mystery. I specifically like it when there is an animal sidekick that participates in solving the crimes. I think when I say that to people that are not genre super readers, they're like, yeah, how many books could that be? And I have read at least 700 of them. And I
Mhm.
continue to find new pockets of this extremely hyper specific genre, which I attribute heavily to Kindle Unlimited, because Kindle Unlimited, their whole algorithm, this whole idea of being Spotify for books, they are heavy into tags and merchandisation, like niche merchandisation. And so, for better or worse, there's a lot to be said for there was not a platform to produce, market, and cycle through these hyper niche ecosystems pre Kindle Unlimited. Now, Cozy Cat Mysteries has been a thing that grandmas have been reading for a very long time. But like when we think about like in romance, for example, monster fuckers, right? Ice Planet Barbarians, Morning Glory
Hmm.
Milking Farm, all big culture shifting books could not have happened without Kindle Unlimited. Because again, if you can't publish a woman over 30 as the love interest in your romance, you definitely can't publish polyamorous 7 foot blue dicked double dicked aliens like that
Yeah.
that
And that, Ariel, is a fantastic point because because the publishing industry has always impacted like what kind of stories you can tell, how you can tell those stories. Like in Ernest Hemingway's day, he's like running out of money in some city, so he like writes a short story and then gets enough money to like continue boozing and like gallivanting around the world. You know, so like the relationship between the business and the artist has always existed. But I think what we're interested in here, Kate, is like how do you think the way the Amazon Kindle Unlimited ecosystem has changed how authors have to write?
Yeah, so the biggest thing with like the author shift, and you can actually see it, you bringing up Ice Planet Barbarians is actually perfect. Because the way that book is structured and how it was written is in several different parts. Because in the earlier days of Kindle Unlimited, it was more advantageous to release like one 30 to 40 like page like chunk at a time. And so you'd have people like coming back for it, and like that's how people read. And so when you read it, you're like, well, this is like not structured as like traditional like novels are, like how things typically are. And it's like a little like it can be a little uneven. And that's where I'm like, listen, give it a little bit. It gets good at some point, don't worry. But now the switch is that you get paid per page read. So if someone reads one page of your book and returns it, I could still get some amount of money out of this. If someone like goes to a physical bookstore, purchases the book and they don't like it and they return it, then as an author, you're not just out the like $1.50 that is the royalty that you get back from that. You actually have to pay back the full sticker price of the book. That's a huge risk, especially if you're an indie author. I've seen horror stories of like books authors doing book signings, and they're telling like the store and being like, hey, like don't order too many books, like just like really like shoot for what you think it's going to be. And then the bookstore will order too much, and then they're like, well, we can just all return them to Ingram, and then you're hit with a $45,000 bill, which is very expensive. And so getting indie books into bookstores, like that is a huge risk, because like as a bookstore, if you're purchasing books and you're like, oh, this author has turned off returns, and you're like, I don't know if I can sell this. And so you're not gonna carry it. But like as the author, like that can be like, as it is like approximately for like physical books, my royalty is $1.50. And so if I have like a $19 book, I have like one single return, then that is like going to be, probably the cost will be more than I make in a month of people buying the book through that store.
yeah.
So from like an author point of view, that is a much better deal. Is it doesn't affect anyone at all if they like give it back, or anything. Even like on ebook, like on digital returns, which you can technically do. Like you still have to, yeah, it's like paying like the full price back, not just the royalty that you got.
I mean, we talk on this show about getting off of Amazon and like the steps to be able to get off of Amazon. And I will come on here and tell you, for the record, like the last thing I get rid of on Amazon is going to be Kindle Unlimited, because there are so many books that only exist on Kindle Unlimited for this exact reason, that it's just like in order to physically print the books or make them available somewhere else, there's a lot more risk involved, right, in doing the upfront for it that you've already put in to edit the book. And so like there's a very valid path to some revenue by only going on Kindle Unlimited, particularly if you are in a hyper specific niche where Kindle Unlimited readers are going to read.
Do you think like something Ariel's talking about here of like the nicheification of these subgenres? Do you think that has like helped facilitate like the generation of like AI slop, where it's like if you're trying to get so far deep into a niche, like we're talking about the publishing industry affecting the stuff that gets written, do you think that that has helped AI grifters? Do you think that we would still be seeing that if Kindle Unlimited didn't exist?
So I actually think that where a lot of this is sort of like the niche comes from is from fan fiction. If you're like, okay, like I really like, like Rey and Kylo Ren, and you can read them in any scenario. Like something that's really popular is sort of like an alternate universe fan fiction. One of the most popular ones of that are like coffee shop AUs. And so it's like, oh, like this is it, but like they're like baristas in a coffee shop. Like I can read this and that, or like you're looking at like other tropes as well, and you can just get something like so specific that that is like exactly what you want to read, because like that's what like people like want to write and all of that. And so I think that that is definitely like where it comes from, is just like people creating earnestly because like they want to do this, because like fan fiction is something that legally cannot be monetized.
I'm sorry, I'm just realizing from this that fan fiction is actually the antithesis of AI slop. Like fan
Yes.
fiction, the incentives for fan fiction and like why someone enjoys it are some of the most unhinged human attributes. Like they're like the
Yeah.
most feral, like meaning exists only because we're weird little guys, like
Yeah.
versus AI
Hey,
slop, which
this
is
slop is
just
handmade.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, exactly. And it's like,
served
and
up
it's
fresh from the brain.
yeah. It's like fresh from it, and it's like these people, like I don't know if you've ever seen the jokes, but like so one of a very popular website, Archive of Our Own, AO3, um but like these authors will get through anything. Like you'll see where it's like a chapter update, and like at the top they're like, sorry, like I just got shot and I'm like still in the hospital. I've had like 3 surgeries, but like here's this chapter, because it's like they're like I have to get it up no matter what. And it is like from like a true deep love that you have these things that are like hundreds of thousands of words. Like the longest like written piece of fiction in the English language is fan fiction. You can't make any money off of it, because that is like, it is not IP that you own. It is like a pure love. And I think that where we now are coming in with like the AI slop of everything is it's people who don't have that love, but they think there's money in it,
Yes.
and they just see dollar signs. And that's where it's like, this is actually something that is like deeply upsetting.
Like our book community was talking about that New York Times article of that woman Coral Hart, who wrote 6,000 AI generated romance novels. And like, I mean, I know Kate will agree with me on this, but like, I need people to understand that this is misogyny. Like, this is all that is misogyny. It is the assumption that romance novels, being the only art form that is made for women, about women, by women, for the most part, that like there's something so brainless about it that AI could write it.
I will say romance readers are probably the highest concentration of anti-AI people. They do not want anything if it looks suspect or anything like that. I have no clue why you would even want to try to grift the romance readers, because they will ultimately catch you.
So you're telling me that a group of people who are committed to a genre that is entirely centered around human connection and intimacy don't like AI?
Yeah, crazy, I know.
Weird.
And that kind of brings us to this question of like, Kate, if you could redesign this ecosystem to have the proper incentives, to have the proper support, we're not saying like this uniquely is going to bring about the reverse enshittification of the internet, but like I think this is an important part of literacy, of people like engaging with other human beings. Like if you were able to wave a magic wand, how would you rethink about this publishing ecosystem?
I mean, I think the big thing is like taking away the exclusivity. Like that is something that would open a lot of doors. The people who have to be exclusive to Kindle Unlimited are only the indie authors, because any traditionally published book, they have deals with Amazon where they will be in Kindle Unlimited, but you're still able to buy the ebook other places. And so it really is just like, it is just punishing indie authors for it. And I think that that is something that would change, that it's like, okay, if we have this idea, if we can open it up so there's like more people, like that could help take some of the pressure off.
So what are the alternatives that someone could use if they wanted to self-publish and use that as their pathway to publishing, but they wanted to avoid the restrictions of Amazon?
Yeah, so one of the most like I would say the one that people always tell you to go to is Kobo. They have an e-reader and their version of Kindle Unlimited, I think it's called Kobo Plus. It's non-exclusive. So it's the same type of thing. You don't get paid by the page, you get paid by how much time people spend reading your book. So that's like an interesting flip side because like Amazon also like how like hypothetically could be punishing people who are speed readers
Yeah.
because like they don't want people just like flipping through mindlessly. And so that's the other thing where it's like a lot of authors are like, I don't know if this page count is accurate because like I'm talking to someone who's like said I read this amount of the book, but it's only like taking up like saying this many pages. And so this is an alternative where they're talking about like, oh, okay, like this is how we can get to it. It's like a non-exclusive version of it, and you can get in there, but the downside is that it doesn't have near the amount of readership. And
Yeah.
so I know a lot of people who've like completely divested from try to completely divest from Amazon, get in there, and then that's just sort of it. And one of the other sites, actually, it's a site called Draft to Digital, which is also how KU authors can get their ebooks into libraries. They've announced that now every author account is going to have a like when you create it, you're going to have to pay like a $20 fee. And then if you make fewer than $100 a year in royalties, you're going to have to pay a $12 maintenance fee. And so the people who are trying their best to like get out of the Amazon ecosystem and like go to like one of the competitors, now they're being nickel and dimed. And
Yeah.
which is something that it's like is a cost on like the smaller authors and not like, okay, how can we figure out a different way to make it? And like once again, like these royalties are a very small amount that is like not the cost of the book. And so it's not like making $100 like if people buy like X amount of these books, it's like no, like that is the actual like it has to be you make that amount of royalties. And there are a lot of like very popular authors who are talking like online who they sell really well and they're like I've made fewer than $100 on Draft to Digital last year, so it's like I would be part of that. And
Yeah.
so that's really where it's like, and guess who doesn't do that? Amazon. That's part of the difficulty and why it is so hard. And because like I know like a lot of readers are they talk about it all the time. They're like, I wish that like my favorite author wasn't publishing through Amazon, but it is also like regrettably one of the only places that like has the readership and will pay you. And so I think
Yeah.
like the exclusivity would be like a really big game changer in the system.
Well, Kate, we really appreciate you being here with us today and spilling the tea on Kindle Unlimited. Where can people find you on the internet, and where would you like people to buy your book, considering all
Oh,
of the pros and cons of the platforms?
yeah. So I am on all the social medias as Kate Crow Author. And that's also my website, katecrowauthor.com. Unfortunately, the most useful place to buy my book is on Amazon.
Yeah.
I wish I wish it wasn't, but it also is available if you want to purchase the paperback. It is on any online bookstore in the world. It's worldwide through that. So if you are completely divested, like there are other options. The Rip Bodice in Los Angeles also has some physical copies, most likely. But yeah, any online bookstore if you're going through there. But yeah,
All right. Well, Kate, should we go Falcon mode? This means that we're going to need a Falcon sound from you.
from me, a falcon sound. I don't know what they sound like. Caw, caw.
That works. That works.
Perfect.
Okay, well done. Well done. So, Falcon Mode is our listener submitted segment where we take a listener submitted idea or a problem and we chat about how to make it more usable, feasible, or fundable. So, today's Falcon Mode comes from Jen. And she says, you know how Gmail has that unsubscribe feature where clicking unsubscribe sends a please unsubscribe me email to the sender, and most of the time that actually works? Why is there not something like that for free trial subscriptions? Like a tool that remembers to cancel the free trial before you get charged? I actually would love that, honestly.
Yeah, that
Yes.
would be that the ADHD tax with free trials is a real problem in my life.
Yes.
Preach.
I'm going to solve this problem for both of you today and
Okay,
for
let's
Jen.
go.
But in order to get the solution, I have to first explain why this is a problem and why it's easy to unsubscribe and it's hard to do a free trial cancel. So, we would need to talk unsubscribe regulation first. So, this is my favorite tech fact that people who don't work in email marketing often don't know. Since 2003, so the entire time most of us have been on the internet, all marketing emails must have a one-click unsubscribe. So that means that when you go to the bottom of the email, there has to be a link to unsubscribe. That is your one click. Clicking it has to be the unsubscription. So even when you click on it and then you get asked, like, why do you want to unsubscribe? Technically on the back end, if they are legally compliant, which if they're using any kind of email marketing system, they would be because it's built in. When you are answering that quiz, you've actually already been unsubscribed. It's optional. They make it look like you have to do it to unsubscribe, but you don't. On the back end, you've already been unsubscribed because it is a one-click unsubscribe law. Other things about CAN-SPAM laws, that's why you see physical like snail mail addresses at the bottom of emails. That's an old 2003 part of the law that like you need to see a physical address to reduce spam. The big one is the one click unsubscribe, and the rule is they have 10 days to honor it. So on the back end, you could do it immediately. Most companies these days will have a cron job that runs immediately, but if you needed to do it by hand for whatever reason, the company has 10 days to follow that. Now, I think that's great. I think we could do more, and so does the FTC, which is why in 2024, the FTC proposed a law called the Click to Cancel law that would have had some really great things, including you have to be able to cancel the same way you signed up. So a gym membership that you signed up for online cannot require that you have to come in person to cancel. It means that you couldn't have someone cancel through a chat bot. That would be illegal in this legislation. It means that you can't make somebody jump through hoops of canceling. So you can't go through, it would be illegal to be like, wait, but if you don't cancel, we'll give you 50% off for a year. Wouldn't be able to do that anymore. We're at a shitty political timeline, and so that was struck down by the Eighth Court of Appeals in July 2025. I have hope that it can be reconciled. But what that means is because of CAN-SPAM and the 2003 regulation on unsubscribes, the unsubscribe rules are regulated. And because they're regulated, that means that they're standardized. And because they're standardized, that means that Google can make some really good technical assumptions about how that unsubscribe works. So that's why you're able to click unsubscribe. And I don't think it actually sends an email. It's using the unsubscribe hook from the email. It just knows where to find in the code the unsubscribe. And because it's the same standardization of how unsubscribe works for pretty much all email marketing, Gmail can do that. Because there is not regulation around how to cancel trials or subscriptions, there is no standardization of how cancellation works. So if you go to 10 different tech companies and you say, how do you physically like go through with a cancellation? Like, how does someone notify you? How do you actually get them off of their subscriptions? It's going to be different for all of those 10 companies. So there isn't really a good solution to be able to like sign up for a free trial and then stop the free trial. If you were going to have a solution, it would be in the payment layer. So like a bank would be the product that does it, because the way they process transactions is standardized. However, if you have executive dysfunction, or if you are a chronic free trial signer upper, you should use virtual cards. So most fintech products these days offer a feature called virtual card. Apple Pay offers it. Essentially, it is a one-time disposable credit card number, like set of credit card credentials that are not your actual card number, and it will work for a period of time. So like, I think by default, the virtual cards you can spin up in Apple Pay don't expire, but they give you more leverage to be able to like shut down that one card number without shutting down the rest of your account. But you can set it to say, make it expire in 24 hours. And so if you signed up for a free trial that way, it goes through. It's a legitimate charge. It is connecting to your bank account, but then a week later, when the subscription tries to ping the credit card again to get the subscription charge, it's now expired. That credit card number no longer exists. So that's the point of a virtual card. So the solution to this is to know upfront when you're signing up for free trials to use a virtual card. That seems to be the best solution for that. But it is, I think this is a really interesting problem because it's such a good example of where regulation makes it a lot easier to actually make your products work the way they should. So yeah, try using a virtual card, y'all. See if that works.
I think you just saved my life.
You're welcome.
This is really, this is big. And this is really where, it's great knowing Ariel, because there's so frequently where it's like, I have an issue. And then it's like, you know how to solve it. It's like, I would have never even thought to ask. So thank you.
Well, everyone, Kate, it's been great having you here. And we appreciate everybody listening in, and hopefully you've learned how to avoid free trials. We appreciate all you for listening. If you have a Falcon mode, you can email us at heyactuallyuseful@gmail.com, or you can hit us up on most social media platforms at actuallyusefulpod. Give us your ideas. Obviously, we just solved Jen's problem, so we can probably solve your problem too. And with that, thank you all, and we will talk to you in a few weeks. Bye.
Bye.
Actually Useful is part of the Industry Plant Podcast Network. It's co-hosted and created by Ariel Butters, and co-hosted, produced, and edited by Josh Stretton Carlson. If you like the show, please consider subscribing to our Substack or YouTube, or give us a follow on most social media platforms at Actually Useful Pod.